Okay, and again, I always like to start with the slight, making sure that the audio video is fine. So please let me know in the chat if my audio is crystal clear, and if it is, then we can go ahead with the lecture. Okay, both clear. Thank you, Nina. Fantastic. Okay, great. Uh, yeah. So welcome everyone. Welcome to day 2 of your training. Okay, and before I start, there are a few things I would like to announce. Okay, so again, a huge shout out to Delta Electronics for organizing this. Okay, so all this training, everything you see, has been organized by Delta Electronics. So thank you very much, Delta Electronics, for supporting and for also, I would say, producing some of the most educational friendly softwares out there, right? So Delta actually is one of the firms which I always encourage people in institutions to to use their softwares, because many of their softwares are free to use, open source, and you know I think that for educational use it is fantastic, right? So thanks Delta for that. Um I would also again like to thank VJTI College. So thanks VJTI College for letting us organize this. I think the number of registrations has gone very, very high now. I hope that we don't overshoot the number of participants in the meeting. But thank you, VJTI. I definitely didn't expect this kind of response, from students and faculty. Also, I would like to congratulate a team in your college, Team DNS. Okay, and the 3 members of Team DNS. Congrats. They have actually been selected to represent one of the teams from India to compete in the International Delta Automation Cup, basically, right? So, congratulations, Team DNS. Very glad that you all have been selected, because I've seen you all working hard from the start. Great. So today I am going to be continuing from yesterday's lecture. Okay. And if you're, I'm just going to do a very quick revision, because I still see so many people joining the session. So I'm just going to take a quick revision of yesterday's session, right? So in yesterday's session, we had actually talked about the basics of PLC programming, right? And we had talked about a contact element, right? So we had talked about how inputs are represented by the symbol X, outputs are represented by the symbol Y, and we also saw how we could read inputs on our PLC, how we could fire outputs. And also in we also saw that if we needed to read the status, okay, of an input or an output, we could use a contact element, right? So a contact element is a Boolean type element, right? It can either be 1 or 0, which means that we can either read a on or an off, right? And this is what a contact element looks like, right? And if you notice carefully, excuse me, if you notice carefully, you will see that it is, I've written here read inputs, outputs, or bits as well. Okay. So there are certain, there are certain bits which we also call as auxiliary relays, which are present in Delta, which we'll also be talking about today. Okay. So contact element is the first element, right? It is a read-only element. After that, we said that to turn on an element, right? We need to use a coil, right? Now, obviously, you cannot turn on an input. Okay, it makes sense. An input can only be read, okay, and output can be fired and read both, right? So the coil can turn on your output element, right? So this is where you're writing a value of 1 or 0 basically to your output element. And again, you can turn on either outputs or auxiliary relays, which we'll see in a few. Okay. We also saw a very brief introduction about how to write simple and or logic, right? So if we have to write an and logic in ladder programming, we have to put our contacts in series, right? And if we have to write or logic, we'll have to put it in parallel. Okay, so this is how you will introduce and or logic. We also saw that we could keep coils in series as well, right? So if we need to turn on multiple coils, we can do it by putting them in series. And finally, we talked about a concept called as latching, right? So a lot of people have asked me, okay, whether when we took the example yesterday of Ram programming the bore well, a lot of people ask me if Ram was a real person. Okay, and I'm going to keep that a secret. Okay, let's just say that I know a lot of Rams in my life. Okay, so that's the answer to that question. And we saw an example of a borewell, right? How to program a simple borewell example. And we saw how to use a concept called as latching, right? So concept latching is a very important concept in PLC programming. And you can see it over here. Okay. We can also use two examples, two other instructions called as set and reset. Okay. So set and reset are instructions that we last covered, right, in the last lecture. We didn't go very deep into set and reset, but I hope most of you have gone through that example. Okay. If you'll have gone through that YouTube example, just give me a yes in the chat so I know that there are people watching it, right? So we had actually gone ahead and programmed a 3D simulation to show you guys where exactly you could use set and reset, right? So I hope that most of you have gone through that, okay? And you all can see the situation in which we would use set and reset, right? So similarly, today we are going to see situations where we'll use timer and counter and other such elements, right? So great. I see a lot of yeses in the chat. So great. Okay. Today we are going to be talking about timer. Okay. So this is, I think, your first big instruction, right, in PLC. So far, we have actually gone through extremely simple instructions, right? Very simple instructions. And today we are actually going to go with a little bit step up. Okay. A little step up to the normal instructions. And this instruction is called as timer. Okay. Now, along with timer, I'm also going to show you all how to create a simulated PLC, right? So a lot of people want to know how to create a simulated PLC. And yes, you can create a simulated PLC, and I'm going to show you how to do that, right? So if you recall, how we communicated with our real PLC, right? We actually went to communication manager here, right? And this communication manager got opened in our system tray at the bottom here, right? So when we double click on this communication manager, you will see yesterday what I had defined, which was the real PLC, right? With the IP address of 192.168.1.5, right? Now, I want to actually create a simulated PLC, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this add button here. And in this driver name, I'm going to name this as, let's say, sim or simulation. You can give it any name you want, right? And in the connection setup type, right, we are going to go ahead and select one of the simulators. Okay. Now, depending on the kind of PLC you are using, if you recall, I had actually given you all an overview of the different types of PLCs. Okay. I hope you all remember. Let me just close this. All the different types of series of PLCs which Delta has, right? So we had the DVP series, we had the AH series, AS series, we had the motion CPU series, we have also a PM series, right? So and in these series there are they are subdivided into different types of controllers, right? So you can actually go ahead and select any one of these series by selecting the series over here, right? So you can go for a DVP, AS, or whatever you're using. So I'm going to go for DVP, right? Because it's the base PLC. And we have been, programming on the real DVP PLC in the previous lecture. In the device settings, you will actually have to select which DVP PLC you want to simulate, right? So I'm going to select the SE, okay? You can go ahead and select whatever you want, right? But I would prefer, if you all are writing projects, everyone to be on the same platform. Let's just mutually agree that we're going to go for SE, right? So we'll select SE PLC, and if you recall, this was the PLC which we used yesterday during the live kit session, right? So we have a DVP simulator with an SE PLC. I'm going to click on OK, right? And by default, if you look here, you will see that this PLC is been defined, but it is in stop mode. Okay. So we actually have to go ahead and start this PLC now, right? So I'm going to click on start, and this is going to start this simulated PLC. Okay. Everything else is absolutely the same. Okay. Everything else is absolutely the same. We go to ISP Soft and we create a project just like we created yesterday. So all the steps, all the functions remain the same. Obviously, the one difference is that I think this is going to open up my previous project. Just give it a second. Yeah, it is. So I'm just going to create a new project. Perfect. So this is your default window. I'm going to do a short revision of this as well, right? So to create a new project, you went on the left here, you created a new project, and we are going to select the controller. Now remember to match this controller type and PLC type with the simulated PLC that you have created. Okay, make sure that it's the same. Here it is DVP SE. So this is going to work. Okay, no problem here. So we are going to click on this, say OK, and this is going to create my project, right? Now, the difference here is that the way to create a program is the same. You right click on program, you say new, and I'm going to select the ladder language, and I'm going to say OK. And this is going to create a new program over here. Great, fantastic. Okay. Now, the difference here is that instead of going to tools, communication, and selecting that real PLC, which was the DVP12SE, okay, I'm going to go ahead and select simulation here. Now, this simulation word has come from what I have defined, what I have defined in the COM manager, right? So if I name this as sim, it will come as sim over here, right? So it is just detecting that particular PLC you have defined, and you just go ahead and click on OK. And now you are going to be connected to the simulator, right? So you can see at the bottom here, it's written simulation DVP simulator, right? And I'm going to go ahead and just download a blank program to the PLC, right? To the simulated PLC. So let's see how we can do that. So go into online mode just like yesterday, and we are just going to download this completely blank program to the PLC, right? So as you can see, the steps are exactly the same, right? It is exactly the same way. And we are now live with the PLC. Now, by default, you will notice that this PLC actually is in stop mode by default, right? So just excuse me a second. Okay. By default, this PLC is in stop mode. So we will have to actually go ahead and, put it into start mode, right? So since there is no program, obviously nothing is going to run, right? Okay, so that is about a simulator. Now we are going to program in a simulator today, right? I'm also going to show you how to use the simulator with HMI and simulate and run the two together. Okay, and we are also going to learn timer, right? Now before we learn timer, there is something important which we will need to learn from the HMI perspective, right? And that is about how data is basically stored in our PLCs, right? How data is going to be stored in our PLCs. So I'm not going to go too deep into this. Okay, again, this is something which is as you go into PLCs, you will probably want to get into this, but this is how data is basically going to get stored in your PLCs, right? Uh, Now, whenever we store data in the PLC, we basically store it in something which we call as a register. Okay. And I want to show you this knowledge here is going to be useful no matter what system you're using, right? Whether you're using PLCs or even some microcontrollers, they are all going to work the same way, right? And let me just open up the calculator as well. So I'm going to show you how data is getting stored, right? So I hope everyone knows. So if you actually open up your calculator, right, and you go to the programmer mode, yeah, and you actually type any number, right? So I'm going to type the number 1000, right? And if I type the number 1000, you will see that the decimal value of this uh, and we can see the octal value of this, and we can also see the binary value of this, right? So the binary value of the number 1000 can be represented as 1111101000, right? So we can see that there are how many how many digits here. We can see 4 plus 4 8 plus 2. That means we are to represent the number 1000, we require 10 digits in our binary. Okay. So if you actually think about it, all data, no matter which system you're using, all data is basically stored ultimately in ones and zeros, right? So if we have to store this data, right? If we have to store this data, we have to store it in something which we call as a register, right? And if we store the number 1000, right, we will require 10 bits to store this data, right? So the fundamental block of storing data, right, is your bit. Okay. Now your bit, you can see it down over here, right? And your bit can basically store either a 1 or a 0. So it is like the most fundamental, storage space, right? And we can basically either store a 0 or a 1. And when we combine these bits together, we can actually store things like integers, strings, and other such things, right? So a lot many people probably don't know this, but a combination of 4 bits is a nibble. Okay. A combination of 8 bits, most probably people will know this is a byte, right? So we know that 8 bits is equal to 1 byte, right? And 16 of these bits together form something which we call as a word. Okay. And 32 of these bits together form something which we call as a double word, right? So this is the way in which we store data in the PLC, right? So if we actually want to store a value of, let's say, 1000, right? We want to store a value of 1000. So like I said, this data will be stored in the first 10 bits, right? So it's going to be stored like this: 1111101000, right? That's how we're going to store it, right? So supposing I write something like 10,000, right? If you see 10,000, now you will see that it has required more space to actually store this value, right? So we see 1, 2, 3, 4. That means I require basically 4 nibbles, right? That means I require 16 bits to basically store this whole word, right? So definitely they're going to find that this word is going to have some limit, right? And I think most people would have figured it out by now, right? The limit will be 65,535, right? Right, which is your 2 raised to 15, correct? And if you notice this number, right, this number is actually 11111, all method basically 16 times 1, right? The moment I increase this by 1, okay, you will see that I will not require 16 bits then to store this, right? I will immediately require another now 20 bits, right? So sorry, this has to be just, yeah. Okay, so you can see that I require now 20 bits, right? So your 16-bit word, okay, your 16-bit word can store value right up to 2 raised to 15, okay, and your bit can store a value of 1 and 0, okay. Now bits are a very good example of a bit, or the kind of a Boolean kind of thing which we were using so far was your inputs and outputs, right? So we learned already about the inputs represented by the symbol X, outputs represented by the symbol Y, right? Now, if you want to use some user-defined bits to do any action, right? Supposing instead of using an input to turn on an output, I actually just want to use some bit which I can either put a 1 or 0, right? Definitely I will not use my inputs for that. I will definitely not use my inputs for that, right? So in that case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and use something which we call as an auxiliary relay. Okay, and this is what we call as our bits. Okay, so we can actually use these bits in our programming, and they are going to be represented by the symbol M. Okay, M for Mumbai, right? So just like our inputs which start from x0, x1, x2, we have auxiliary relays which start from M0, M1, M2, so on and so forth, right? And these are a lot of them. Okay, so there are maybe thousands of these auxiliary relays. I think there are, around 4096 in the DVP series, right? So you have a lot of these relays to work with. In addition to that, to store integer values, like supposing I want to store a value of 100 or 200, right? Then I can store it in a word. Okay, so I can store it in a word, and in Delta, the symbol for word is D. Okay, D for Delhi, right? And this will start from D0, D1, D2, so on and so forth, right? So a word will consist of 16 bits basically, right? So I just wanted to give this background because we are going to use this in HMI programming, right? So if you all are actually seen the examples of the 3D simulation, you all might have noticed that I have used this auxiliary relays instead of inputs, right? I hope people have noticed that, right? Now that will make sense, right? So in that 3D simulation software, I cannot tell that software to write to my inputs. Okay, that doesn't make sense, right? So I tell it to write to my auxiliary relays. Okay. Okay, fantastic. So let's move on from here. I'm going to start with timer, right? And then we will move on to visualization, which means your HMI, right? So yes, your timer. Now, timers are used very extensively in PLC programming, right? Timer can basically be used to introduce a delay in logic, or it can be used to introduce a sort of like an on timer for logic. Okay, so there are two ways to use the timer, right? So is let's say that we'll take a very simple example of turning on a light. Okay, so to turn on a light, I basically require a switch, right? And if I turn that switch on and I introduce a delay after I turn on that switch, that is using a timer to delay my logic, right? So I can say turn on switch, some switch. After 5 seconds, I will turn on my light, right? That is a delay in logic, right? Another way to use a timer is by supposing I want to turn on a switch, the light turns on immediately, but I only want to turn on the timer for a particular period of time, right? So in that case, I am going to use a timer for the on time. Okay, so these are two ways in which we can do this, right? So in timer, okay, so far all the other elements which you have used, contact, coil, set, reset, all these other elements, you have only used one element, one single element, right? In timer, actually, you have, you have a syntax which you have to use, right? And I'm going to be introducing syntax today as well. And in the timer, we are going to see how to use this syntax and what is the part of the syntax, right? So what do I mean by syntax, right? What do I mean by syntax? So by syntax, I mean that instead of dragging this contact over here, right, and creating this element, there is a way to actually directly write this in Delta, right? So I can double click here, okay, and I can use the syntax to create a contact which is LD, okay, and then I can put a space and I can create, let's say, X0 or X2 or whatever we were using yesterday, right? So if I write this, it is going to create a contact of X2 directly, right? So this is what I mean by syntax, right? We had not covered syntax yesterday. Now for timer, we have a syntax which is TMR S1, S2, where S1 is basically your timer number and S2 is the time base multiplier, okay, in milliseconds, right? So we have two elements now to figure out, right? The first is the timer number and the second is the time-based multiplier, right? So if you go into the particular PLC's manual, okay, now depending on the series, this table is going to change, okay? This particular table is for the DVP series of PLC, right? So we can see that this timer is represented by the symbol T, just like inputs was represented by X, outputs was represented by Y. So we have the timer which is represented by the symbol T, and we can see that it's distributed in this way in the DVP series in this particular PLC, right? So we have timers running from T0 to T126, T128 to T183, and we have all these different timers which are defined basically, right? Now, if you notice, there is something, some kind of time which is mentioned here, right? So we have a 100 millisecond block here, right? We have a 10 millisecond block here, and we have a 1 millisecond block over here, right? So this is something which we call as a time base, okay? It's called as a time base, okay? So what does this time base mean, okay? This means that in these particular timers, okay, are going to only be you'll only be able to implement these timers in multiples of your time base, right? So for example, let's say I want to implement a timer of, let's say, 500 milliseconds, right? So then I will be able to implement this, okay, by basically multiplying this by 5, and I get 500 milliseconds, right? Now, if I want to implement a timer of, let's say, 550 milliseconds, right? I will not be able to use this time base then, right? I will have to go for the 10 milliseconds time base, right? Because I can't multiply a non-whole number, right? It has to be a whole number. So in this particular time base, right, I have 10 milliseconds. If I want to implement 550 milliseconds, what I will do is I will multiply this by 555, sorry, right? And again, if you want a timer which is very specific, right, very specific, and you want it like, say, let's say 555 milliseconds, right? So in that case, you'll have to go with a time base of 1 millisecond, right? Now, if you notice, you will see that there are a lot of timers for 100 millisecond time base, right? You will see that 127, 56, 16, approximately maybe around 200 timers here, right? And in the 10 milliseconds, you will see that there are only 46 timers, right? And in the 1 millisecond, there is 1 plus 4, which is basically only 5 timers, right? So this basically is designed because the generally in most applications you will end up using 100 millisecond base timers, right? The higher, the lower time base you go for, the higher is going to be the load on your PLC CPU, right? Which is why they don't give you a lot of these timers, right? Okay, so I think enough talk. Let us try implementing this, right? Let's go to our programming software, and I'm going to implement the timer, right? So to implement the timer, what we're going to do is we're going to double click on this line, and I'm going to write TMR, right? And I'm going to implement the first timer here, right? So I'm going to implement the T0 timer, right? So I'm going to write T0, right? And I'm going to write some number, right? Let's say the number can be something like, let's say 10. Okay. So what has actually happened here is that a timer block has been created. And if you notice, this timer block has 3 pins, right? The first is an enable pin, right? The second is S1, which is your your timer number. And your second is your time base multiplier, right? This is the number which is going to get multiplied by the time base, right? So if I need to start this timer, right? If I need to start this timer, just give me a second. Yeah. If I need to start this timer, I can start it by using any contact, right? And we have just learned about auxiliary relays. Okay, so I'm going to implement an auxiliary relay M0, right? So we have an auxiliary relay M0, and let's just call this as start timer, right? We're going to start the timer from here, right? Now, how long is this timer going to run? Okay. And you can figure this out by actually looking at the time base, right? So we know that T0, right? We know that T0 has a time base of 100 milliseconds, right? So by introducing 10 here, we are going to be running this timer for 100 milliseconds into 10, which is 1000 milliseconds, which equals 1 second, right? Now, 1 second is actually too little to run a timer for you all to actually see what is going on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change this to 5 seconds, right? So 50 into 100 milliseconds, which is 5000 milliseconds, which is equal to 5 seconds, right? So we are going to run this timer, right? And let us just download this to the simulated PLC. So just for everyone's information, I am using a simulated PLC now. Okay, I'm using a simulated PLC. Great. Okay. So if I want to run this timer, what I can do is I can just right click on this auxiliary coil here, and I can say set on. Okay, and this is going to run this timer, right? And this timer is basically going to run up to 5 seconds, right? And after 5 seconds, if you notice, this T0 has now become green, okay, which is basically an indicator. Okay, it is basically an indicator. So now in Delta, this T0 is actually a very special, I would say, symbol, right? This T0 can be read as a contact, and it can also, you can also read the value of T0, which is the current value, which is the current time which is elapsed. Okay. So definitely we have not done any logic now, right? We have just implemented a simple timer, and it has reached 5 seconds and nothing has happened, right? So we need to implement some logic out of this, right? So let us say that we have an application where we say, let's say start the timer, okay? And we have to start the timer and we have to turn on an output, right? Let's say that, that previous example in our borewell, Ram decides that, okay, instead of just letting the borewell run and overflow, I will run the borewell for maybe a particular period of time, right? Let's say 20 seconds or something, right? So let's say that he implements the timer, and after that, he'll write a contact of T0, right? And we will write a coil over here, and we'll name this as Y0. Okay, so let's say that this is an example where, let's say, I will turn on this start timer, and after 5 seconds, the lamp will turn on, right? After 5 seconds, the lamp will turn on. Okay, so let's see how this is going to work, right? So the first thing I want you all to notice is that when the timer is getting enabled and I turn it off in between, you will notice it goes back to 0, right? So there are actually two types of timers. There is retentive and non-retentive. This is a non-retentive timer, which means that it constantly needs an enable to be on for it to run. Okay, it needs an enable to be on continuously for it to run. So if the enable goes off in between, then it is going to turn off, right? So let me start by running the timer, and we see that the timer is running. And after a period of 5 seconds, this is going to, oh wait, I haven't updated this, sorry. Yeah. So after a period of 5 seconds, this timer is going to turn on this lamp. Okay, very, very simple, right? Very straightforward, right? Now, assume let's say that we come back to our friend Ram, okay? And this guy basically says that I need to turn on my borewell, right? I need to turn on my borewell. And when I turn on this borewell, I'm actually going to, I'm going to turn it on only for a period of 20 seconds, right? So this, what we have introduced here is something which we call as a delay, right? So I have pressed this timer, right? I have pressed this timer, and I press this button, and after a period of 5 seconds of delay, my lamp is turning on, right? This is how it is actually running, right? Supposing I want it in the other way, right? I want to say that if I press this, it should turn on for a period of, let's say, 5 seconds, right? So let's say that our friend Ram basically wants to run his borewell, right? So let's name this as the borewell, and he's going to run this borewell motor. And he's saying that, okay, I need to turn on this borewell after 5 seconds, right? So what is he going to do? He is going to invert this contact here, right? So if I invert this contact and I put a condition of M0 before this, right? Then this borewell will turn on for a period of 5 seconds and then turn off, right? So let me just try that. Okay, so I'm going to turn on this timer, and we can see that this indicator has turned on, right? The indicator has turned on, and after a period of 5 seconds, it has now turned off, right? So this is a way you can introduce an on time for your logic, right? Now, if you'll notice, this logic looks a little messy here, right? This looks pretty messy, right? you can actually write this whole thing in one line. Okay, so just to show you optimization, right? I can take a coil over here. I can put this in parallel, right? I can name this as Y0 and I can put a T0 before this. Okay, I'm just copy pasting here. And if you see now, instead of having two lines where I had to introduce an M0 on each of these lines, I now have one single network. So I can actually just delete this and this is going to work fine, right? So let me just update this logic. Okay. So update online, update completed, and I'm going to turn this off and turn this on. Okay, so it has turned on. You can see that the borewell is turning on, and after 5 seconds, it will turn off, right? So now no one's going to scream at Ram for keeping the borewell on for a long time, right? he's quite safe now, right? So great. This is all about your timers, right? We'll do a little bit practice on timers maybe in some of the applications, right? But before that, I would just like to show you all counters as well. Okay. Now, if you want accumulated timers, right, which you mean you want retentive timers, right? You have certain timers which are mentioned here, which are written as accumulative, right? Can you see T250 to T255? We have T240 to T245, right? So what are these accumulative timers? These timers are actually timers that will remember and retain the value even when the enable is removed. Okay. So in order to use this, let me just turn this off. And I'm going to use the T250 timer, right? Which is the first, if you notice, it is the first accumulative timer, right? So I'm going to use this T250 timer. I'll have to change this here as well. Okay. And now if you notice, I'll just update this. Just a second. Yeah, I just have to download the program again. Okay, so if I have to run this timer, I'm going to turn on this timer. It's going to start. And if I turn this off in the middle, you will see that this T250 value has not gone. It has not gone, been reset to 0. Okay, so this is very useful when you don't want your timer actually to reset to 0. Very, very useful, right? And this is something which is called as a retentive timer or an accumulative timer, right? Now, the question is that if you cannot, reduce this to 0, then how do you make it 0, right? That is the question, right? So we can actually go ahead and add a line here. And I can add a line and say, I'll use a reset button, like a reset auxiliary relay, reset. And I will put a reset coil here, okay? So I'm going to reset this T250 by using a reset coil, okay? So what is going to happen here is that if I reset this T250, right? Now everyone has learned about set reset, and set and reset can also be used on these timer, the timers as well, right? So if you can see, there is a 20 value of 29, which is basically 2.9 seconds, right? And if I go ahead and turn this on, you will see that I can reset this back to 0, right? So in retentive timers, this is how you can use retentive timers. They work exactly like your normal timers, except that it remembers the value, right? Fantastic. Okay. Now, once the timer is completed, as usual, the T250 is going to turn on, and the only way you will be able to turn it off is by resetting it. Okay. So I am going to take a short Q&A in a bit. Okay. So before that, I'm going to cover counters. Okay. And once I've finished with counters, we'll take a short Q&A and a break, and then we'll go into the visualization part. Okay. So I'm just going to delete this and quickly talk about counters, right? Now, if you know timers, counters is very, very simple, right? Counting is something which is used extensively in the industry. I don't need to explain, right? So you could be counting production, you could be counting bottles, uh, you could be counting anything, right? You could also be counting number of cycles in a program or something like that. So A counter is one of the basic, I would say, building blocks of most some logic, right? And just like timer, counter has a syntax, and how timer was TMR, counter is CNT. Okay, so counter is simpler compared to timer in the sense that there is no such thing as a time base or things like that, right? It is very simple and straightforward, where you have a counter numbers C0, C1, C2, so on and so forth, and you have number of counts, right? Which is basically how many times you wanted to count. Okay. So again, there is a memory mapping of all the different types of counters. Now there are things like 16-bit counters. We have talked about 16-bit words, right? So if you want to count only up to a value of 65,535, which is 2 raised to 15, you can use these 16-bit counters. If you want to count more than that, then you will have to use the 32-bit counters. And these 32-bit counters actually count up and down both, right? And this is something which we are not going to be covering, but just for academic point of view, is that if you're using an encoder in your logic, right? An encoder is a device which can actually measure position when you connect the shaft to a moving conveyor or something like that. And counters are the function block which we use to actually read the encoder pulses. Okay. So again, we are not covering encoders, just a brief about that. So if we have to implement counters, what we can do is go to the logic. We can write CNT C0, and let's say we want to count to 3. Okay, 3 counts. And let's say that we use our M0 auxiliary relay. Let's say this is 1 count or something. Let's say that this is a sensor, right? We can maybe call this as a sensor as well, right? So let's say you have an application where you have bottles basically passing on a conveyor belt, and you want to count the number of bottles, right? So in that case, you'll probably have a sensor, right, which is going to be counting the number of bottles, and you will want to use the function block to basically count, right? So we have the counter block for that, right? Now, just like your timer, once this count is complete, it is going to turn on this C0. Okay. And then we can take some action. Maybe we can turn on an output, let's say a buzzer or something, right? Once the production is complete. Okay. So let's say Y0 is a buzzer. We are going to turn on that Y0 buzzer once the production is complete, right? And again, in counters, you will have to reset the counter once it is done. Okay. So we are going to use something like, let's say, another auxiliary relay, let's say M1, and we'll call this as reset again, and we will reset this counter, right? So I'm going to put this as a reset coil and put C0 here, right? Right. So let us just update this program, see how this is going to run. Fantastic. Okay. So when the sensor turns on, okay, this counter is going to increase by 1, as you can see over here. And this sensor has to go off and then again turn on. Okay. So effectively, you are only taking the rising edge pulse of that particular sensor, if that makes sense, right? So we turn on the sensor, count increases by 1, and again turn it off. And now once this reaches the target value, which is currently 3, okay, that is when we will turn on this counter bit, right? And which will then turn on our buzzer, right? Now, if you notice, even if I turn this on, okay, even if I turn on this counter, this is not going to increase. In Delta, it works like this. This is not going to increase, right? And if I want to actually turn off this counter bit, I will have to go ahead and reset it. Okay, so I can reset this counter and it will turn it off. Okay. So this is all about your counters. Very, very simple, right? I'm going to be releasing 2 more videos so that you'll understand how maybe timers and counters are implemented in the industry, right? So stay tuned for that. And before we jump to visualization, right, which is your HMI and your SCADA, I'd like to take a short Q&A, right? So if there are any questions, you can go ahead and ask me, right? Any questions about what has been covered today right now? Any questions? Okay, you can put it in the chat. Okay, good question. how precise are these timers? Can we use the internal timer for time precise applications such as digital clock after present time is fed, or do you need to have an RTC? I wouldn't depend on the timer for very precise. Now you have to figure out how precise you actually want this timer to be. Okay. If you're talking about nanosecond level precision, definitely this is not something that you should be using, right? This timer is basically built for like turning on like actuators, uh, introducing a delay. So it is not really it is not really something that we can that we can actually use to have accurate time, right? So over a period of time, probably you will find that first of all, the PLC, when it turns off, right, when the PLC turns off, you're not going to be counting, right, that time. So if you're using like a clock, right, you're using timers, as soon as your PLC or your machine turns off, that timer is going to turn off, right? So it's definitely not going to be used for something like a digital clock. But if most PLCs do have RTCs, right? So we can use an RTC inbuilt in the PLC for getting your date and time and stuff like that. How to create a loop for accumulative timer or counter? Accumulative counters, I am not sure, Saad, what you mean by create a loop. Okay. If you mean how you can reset it or something, just explain a little bit more, right? Please explain auxiliary relay. Yes, I will explain, no problem. Is there a minimum threshold for the sensor input for the counter? Like if the input is weak, then it will count +1. Okay, right. So this minimum threshold has nothing to do with counter function. Okay, all PLCs have a particular voltage threshold, which will accept the inputs, right? So remember when we were talking about power supplies, I told you that no power supply is perfect, right? So it's never going to give you perfectly 24 volts, right? It will probably be a plus minus here and there, right? So PLCs actually have a cutoff, right? So most PLCs have a cutoff, I think, around 18 volts, right? Any signal above 18 volts will be considered as a high signal. Any signal below 18 volts will be considered as a low signal, right? So the answer to your question is that if the sensor is not giving you above 18 volts, then it will definitely not be counted as a count, right? And it will not be detected in the PLC because the PLC will still think that it is 0. Okay. Okay. Besides these questions, anything else? Please ask in the chat. Okay. I will explain the auxiliary relay concept once again. Right. Right. Okay. So the reason for using auxiliary relays is basically, having user-defined sort of bits which I can use. Right. So supposing now all this while we have been doing very simple applications, right? We have said that, okay, if I turn on this switch, then turn on this output, right? Very simple applications. But supposing I want an application where I need to store a value of 1 or 0, in some flag, let's say, right? In some flag. I cannot use an input as a flag, right? Because I cannot waste my inputs. My inputs are meant for physically connecting sensors, buttons, things like that. And as most of you know that inputs are limited on my PLC, right? In my hardware PLC, I only had 8 inputs, right? So I cannot waste my inputs. So then in that case, I can use something which is called as an auxiliary relay, which is also called as a memory bit. Okay. So this memory bit can be accessed by using the M0, M1, M2. Okay. So you can use various bits to basically store data, right? So you can use these bits however you want, right? You want to use it to turn on something, go ahead. You want to use it as a coil, you can go ahead and do that as well. It is completely user defined, right? So that is what the explanation is. Okay, I'm going to move on, guys. Any other questions, please let me know in the chat. Okay, let me know in the chat and I'll be very happy to answer them. I'm going to be going ahead with visualization now, right? And let's take a very brief about, overview about visualization. Now, there are two softwares which I'm using for visualization. The first is DOPSoft, okay, and this is basically a software for the latest DOP 100 series of HMIs, which is released by Delta, right? And the yes, there's a question. Auxiliary relays are internal. Yes, they are internal. No, they are internal bits basically. There is no hardware relation to it, right? It is completely software. Okay. Right. So we have a software called DOPSoft, which is based on the DOP 100 series of HMIs, right? HMI is basically human machine interface, right? So if we, when we look at our computers, supposing I tell you use your computer without using your monitor, okay? And you will tell me, no, I cannot do that, right? I need to see what I'm doing, right? In the same way, in some machines, if we need to put certain parameters, right? We need to put certain data, or let's say we need to feed certain values, or we need to see the status of the machine, get alarms, history, anything like that. We can use something called as an HMI, okay? This is also called as MMI, okay? Multimedia interface, or HMI, right? Human machine interface. Now, the software used for Delta in programming HMI is called as DOPSoft. Okay, it's a very simple software. Okay, we'll cover this very quickly, and it is a very nice software for simulating applications. Right. So I'm going to open up the software, and by default, when you open this up, you will see that there are some tabs on the left here, new file, open file, and you will see that there are some of the, some of the HMIs which I had designed previously, right? So you can see this tank, and you can see the traffic light, and, simple applications like that. Now, if you want to just see what is the, just an overview of the kind of functions in the HMI, you can go ahead and click on this example over here, right? So you can click on this example, double click on this, and you will actually see an example of a development which has been done by Delta. Okay, so this is an example of a development, right? And let us just run this HMI to give you an idea of how it has been designed, right? So I'm going to right click on this offline, I'm going to click on this offline simulation here. I'm going to click on this, and this is going to open up your HMI window. Okay. Okay. So offline simulation basically means that without a PLC, I can actually run this. And this has all been done in simulation, right? So they have created a program in simulation just to give you an idea of what are the different types of elements which you can use in an HMI, right? So the first thing which you need to realize in an HMI is that you are basically creating a user interface for the user, right? Now, when we look at our Android phones and our iPhones, maybe you will see that there is a navigation bar, right? There's probably gestures, or there's a navigation bar at your bottom, right? And we also have things like menu buttons and setting buttons and stuff like that, right? In the same way, as a programmer, you are expected to basically create a user navigation first, right? So in this particular example, you can see that navigation has been done at the side, right? So they have designed a navigation bar which can jump to different screens in the HMI, right? So if you actually go to the editor, you will see that there are various screens, right? You will see that there are various screens which have been created, right? And each of these screens have been made accessible by this bar at the left, right? Which is this bar over here, right? So just to give you an overview of some of the functions, right? We have things like meters, right? We have things like bar graphs as well. We have things like pipe graphs, right? Now, this is all accessible to you guys. If you all just download the software, you all will get this as a sample, okay? So we have things like this. Then we have a display as well. Okay, so you have if you want to display maybe the date, or you want to display some text, or you want to have a running display, you can have all these different types of displays, right? It also allows you to do some degree of movement, right? So this can be something like an animation or something. You can also feed in a GIF, GIF, right? Which you can then implement in your HMI, right? And we have things like alarms over here, right? So a very important part of HMI is basically showing alarms which have happened in the particular machine, right? So you can see this is the kind of alarm. It is written some alarm name, some code, then the date and time at which the alarm has come, and it is written timeout or something like that, right? So this is the various alarms, like maybe something like temperature high, temperature low, or something like that, right? Then we also have entry fields, right? So we can actually have a virtual keyboard pop up and allow us to feed data. Okay, allow us to feed data into our HMI. I'm going to show you live how to program this. We have things like indicators as well. So if you need to indicate something, you have various states, right, which you can indicate with, right? Now, when you have an indicator, generally we think of indicators as having just two states, which is either on or off, right? But Delta allows you to have 256 states. Okay, so you can have 256 different colors for different states, right? Most of the time for lamps or something, you will have like a red or a green, right? Just a simple off or an on. You also have things like switches. So if you need to turn on a machine or you need to turn on some logic, you can actually do that from the HMI. Again, we will be seeing how to do that. We have things like history, which is basically your alarm history, maybe some data, some graphs, or anything like that. And we have security. Now, security is something which is very, very important in HMIs, right? And there are basically by default, there are 8 levels which are defined in Delta, right? And these levels are basically to restrict different types of users, right? So, for example, the guy who's probably just going to use the machine to run the machine, like an operator. So that guy is just going to want the basic level of access, right? Now, supposing there's a plant manager who has the power to basically change that machine parameters or change some settings, right? So he will have a higher level of access, right? And definitely there will be also an access level for engineering level, right? So someone who wants to make a change to the critical parts of the machine, he will get access through the engineering security, right? So there are various securities which you can develop. And I guess that's it. So we have things like curves as well, right? So you can have different graphs and stuff like that. And there's also something which is called as recipe. Okay. Now that sounds very interesting, right? Recipe and HMI, right? But let me explain what it is, right? So assume now that you have a machine in, let's say, Frito-Lay. Okay. Now everyone knows that Lay's packets comes in 5 rupees. It comes in also 10 rupees. It comes in 20 rupees, right? So you have various types of packets, right? So usually there is not one machine for 5 rupees, one machine for 10, and one for 20. It is one machine which can pack all the different types of chips. Okay. So in order to actually switch from that 5 rupees packet to that 10 or 20 rupees packet, okay, you will need to do a lot of parameter changes in your HMI, right? So you might think that is just one switch. It's not. It's maybe the number amount of nitrogen which you put into your packet, right? Everyone knows that Frito-Lay puts a lot of air and nitrogen into their packets, but let's not talk about that. So the amount of nitrogen in the packet, then the sealing time, maybe you will have parameters like the length of the packet, you will have the amount of chips, all these different parameters are there, right? So every time the person has to actually switch from this type of packet to the other, he's not going to sit and manually change 10 parameters, right? What they do is they use a concept called as recipe, right? Now, recipe basically is, let's say, if we are talking about the Frito-Lay, recipe for Frito-Lay is like the 5 rupees packet is one recipe, okay? In that, there will be 10 parameters, and those parameters are called as ingredients, okay? So, ingredient recipe, we are talking so much about cooking now, right? But these are the terms which we used in the HMI, right? So, you can have maybe 10 ingredients, which maybe represent 10 parameters, right? And these, with one click of a button, you can change all these parameters in one shot by just loading the recipe. Okay. So you will obviously have to do this setting before. You will have to manually sit and change the recipe, right? And you will want to actually, put the ingredients and set it into the recipe. But once that is done, it can be called at any time. Okay. Okay, I think enough of theory for today. Let us just go straight into HMI programming, okay? Because HMI programming is something which is really amazing, right? So I'm going to just show you how to create a program from absolute scratch, right? So the first thing what you want to do is open up your Doc100 software like this, right? And what we are going to do is that we are going to click on this new file here, right? This new file. And this is going to open up something which we call as a project wizard. Okay. Now, this is going to allow you to select the type of HMI which you can use, right? Now, there are various types of HMIs. Now, this depends on the screen size. Okay, so this is your 4-inch screen size. This is your 7-inch screen size. This might be around 10-inch, and you also have 12-inch as well, right? So you have various screen. I think this is 15-inch, if I'm not mistaken. This is 12-inch, and this is 10-inch, right? So you have various screen sizes, right? Which we can have in HMIs, right? What I'm going to do is I'm going to select 107WV, okay, which is a very standard HMI which we use in the industry. This HMI has Ethernet inbuilt in it as well, and this is a 7-inch HMI. So you can go ahead and select any one. Now click on next, and it is going to open up the communications page, right? Now, the whole point of the HMI is that it can communicate to various devices, right? So generally in any system, you will see that the HMI is generally considered as the master. Why is the HMI considered as the master? Most people will think the PLC will be master, not HMI, right? So why is the HMI considered as master is because the HMI is actually going to be communicating to a lot of devices, right? So the HMI will probably be connecting with your VFD drives. It can be communicating with temperature controllers. It can be communicating with your, let's say your PLC, maybe multiple PLCs, right? So you will see that there are many communication ports on your HMI. Here we have 3 COM ports, right? And these COM ports support something which is called as Modbus serial type of communication, right? Now, today's lecture is not going to be about industrial communication, but you can go ahead and check out what is Modbus and how to communicate and stuff like that. And it supports RS-232, RS-485. There are 2 standards for Modbus serial communication, right? It also has Ethernet as well, right? So I have an Ethernet PLC. So generally, I would have interfaced using Ethernet directly, right? So the important thing for people who are using simulators, right? If you're using a simulator, now I have created a simulator in this COM manager called as simulation, right? You can see it over here. Now, if I want to make this HMI communicate with my simulated PLC, I can actually do that. And that is something which is amazing, which Delta provides to us. In the for communication at the bottom right, you can go ahead and select simulation, right? What this is going to allow you to do is going to allow your simulated virtual PLC to talk with your HMI and you can actually run it together. Okay, so let's see that. Click on finish and we have opened up our HMI, right? And definitely this HMI looks very, very boring, completely white screen, and it looks also very complicated, right? Lots of buttons and stuff like that. Believe me, HMI is a very, very simple software. Okay, very, very easy to use, right? And I'm going to just show you some of the just basic functions, right? Because this lecture is all about just basics, right? So in your HMI, this one bar over here is very important, which consists of all your elements, right? So this bar is basically only visual elements. This from here till here, right? So you have things like lines, rectangles, circles, polygon, static text, things like that, right? So just to show you what a rectangle looks like, I'm going to click this, I'm going to drag, and I'm going to create a rectangle here, right? And if you notice, there's no fill, there's nothing like that. So I'll have to actually double click this and I will have to change the color and stuff like that. So in the line color, I can change it to something like, let's say a deep maroon or something like that. And in the foreground, I can change it again to a deep maroon, right? And this is just going to give you a preview of what it's going to look like. And if you notice, it looks like a gradient sort of fill is because by default gradient is selected, right? So you can actually put fixed to get a solid block color, right? So I like the gradient look, so I'm going to click on OK. And you can see that I've created a very simple, rectangle, which I can probably use as a background or something, right? Great. So these are all your visual elements, like I said, right? So we have your rectangle, your circle, polygon, you have things like static text. So static text, you can actually just create a text. I'm going to write this as, let's say, go to text and say my first HMI or something like that, right? And I can say I want it to be aligned in the center, bold, and a bigger size probably. And I could also change the color to white or something like that, right? So there are lots of things you can play around with, right? And if you notice, it is actually having a very ugly white foreground color, right? And I would want it to be transparent, right? So that it does not have that white frame, right? So this is just a static text where you can just name any element you want to name, right? Now to actually interface with your PLC, right? We want to interface this with the PLC. How we're going to do that is actually create things like buttons and stuff like that, right? So now, since this is, again, I don't have enough time to actually extensively explain HMI, but I'm just going to explain the very basics. We have a element called as button over here. Okay, so I'm going to click on this and you will see that there are various types of buttons which can be used. Okay, so you can see the level of customization which is possible in HMIs, right? Now, there are two buttons which are very important to us. Okay, one is the momentary one and one is the maintained one. So I'm going to be covering these two. Okay, and these are the ones which you will probably use 80%, 90% of the time. So I'm going to first click on momentary. I'm going to create a button by dragging here and creating this button, right? And we can see a very boring gray color button. So let's just edit this, double click this. And as I told you guys that your button is going to have two states, right? It's going to have two states. One state is your off state and one is going to be your on state, right? So for your zero off state, I would like this to be, let's say, red, right? Write this to be red. And for your on state, which is 1, I will like this to be green, right? So which is our normal. So we have 0 off state red, on state green, right? And let's say I want to write to a value of M0. Okay. So let's say that we delete this program and let's create, like, let's say something like a timer of 10 seconds. Okay. And let's say that we have this start timer, okay, and this M0 we now want to link it to this button here. So what we can do is, in this write address, I can go ahead and select M in the device type and write the address as 0. Okay, I'm going to click on enter, right? And in the read address, I will need to copy and paste the same thing, right? Because not only do I want to write a 10 to this M0, I also want to read the status of this M0. That means I want to read whether it is on or off, right? So let's do that. Now, just for your knowledge, if you want to make this into a round button, you can go ahead and do this, right? But I like to keep it as a square button, right? So we'll do that, click on OK. And our first button has been created over here, right? Now, this button is going to allow us to basically turn on this M0, right? Now, I told you guys that basically there are two buttons which I want you all to see. One is the momentary and one is the maintained, right? Now, I'm a little lazy, right? All programmers are very lazy by default. So we want to actually, do shortcuts, right? And I think copy paste is an engineer's best friend, right? So I'm going to copy paste this button, right? And what I'm going to do is to convert this from a momentary. If you recall, I had actually created this as a momentary button. To convert this to a maintain, what I can do is I can click on this, and on the right side, I have some properties here, right? So I can actually go ahead and change the function to maintain. Okay, so I've changed the function to maintain, right? And that is it, right? That is how I have interfaced my button over here. So now let's not or let's probably run this and see how this is going to work. So let's say that I update this program here, right? And I'm going to show you us the HMI side by side. Okay, so let's say that I reduce this a bit and I put my HMI. And just for everyone's reference, I clicked on this offline simulation button over here on the right side, right? So I clicked on this button and this has now created an HMI over here, right? So this HMI, has this M0 button tagged to it. So if I actually click this momentary, you will observe what is going to happen. Can you see that it has now turned on in my program? And if I release this button, you can see that it has gone back to 0. Now, what is a momentary button? A momentary button is just like that push button which we saw yesterday, right? That means if you press the button, it is going to turn on. And when you release that button, it will turn off, right? So that is what a momentary is. Now, a maintain button is something that will maintain that state as long as you press it, right? So I'm going to click on that. and we have this timer running here, right? And if I turn this off, then only it will go off, right? So I don't need to keep my finger pressed, right? Like the kind of problem which Ram was facing the other day, right? So we have momentary and maintain buttons, right? Great. So let me try to, just put a little bit more elements into my program now, right? The first thing is like, supposing I want to change this value of timer, right? So right now we are using a value of 10 seconds here, right? What if I want to change this value and I want to actually, let's say, put a value from the HMI, right? I want to feed in the time from the HMI, right? So in order to do that, what we can do is we can write D0 over here, right? We can put D0 over here and we can go ahead to the HMI and we can go to this input over here. Okay, you can see an N symbol here. It's an input symbol. Click on numeric entry and we can create a numeric entry over here on the right side, right? Now this looks super ugly, so let's just change the color, right? So the border color we can change to like something like blue or something. The background color like something like a dark blue or something, right? So this will change the color. And I also don't like the text inside, so I'm going to change that. I'll go to text and I will change the color to something like white, and maybe the font also can be changed to whatever you want, right? So something like uh, yeah, anything you want, right? So let's just stick to something simple for now, Arial, and I'm going to just change this size to something bigger so it is visible, and we click on OK. Now, what this is going to do is this is going to allow us to write a value. Okay, it's going to allow us to write a value to this timer here. Okay, it's going to allow us to write a value, right? And now I want to write a value, right? So I'm going to double click this, and now in the right address, I'm going to write the D0, right? So I'm going to link that D0 over here, right? Click on this, click on read address, right? And we have the D0 over here as well, right? So click on OK. And now what we can do is we can actually go ahead and click on the data display as well, right? So now this was only for inputting data, right? To input something, right? If we want to display data as well, right? Now, supposing I want to display the amount of time elapsed, right? How much time has elapsed. So I can go ahead and click on this data display and create this over here. And again, I'm going to change this to a much better color, I would say, right? And again, text, I'm going a little fast, guys, because I think this is something which you all can follow along later. And in the read address, if you notice now, there is no write address, right? So I'm not going to be inputting a value. Okay, I'm going to be only writing a value. Sorry, reading a value, right? So I want to read the value of the current value of T0, right? So I'll select T and write 0 here, right? And we have T0, right? And I'm going to click on OK, right? So we have this now. If you all want something a little bit fun, I would say, right? A little bit fun. I'm going to delete this my first HMI thing. And if you all want something like we have things in the HMI also as some things like tank display and stuff like that, right? So if you actually go to this top here and you select the pipe graph, right? You actually see that there are various types of pipes which we can actually interface, right? Tanks, pipes, things like that, right? So just for fun, we'll see if we can link a value of the timer to this tank and see whether it goes up and down, right? So I'm going to double click this, and in the read address, I want to read the value of T, right? T0, right? Which is probably, we are going to make it run from 0 to 100. And you can also change the water level color and stuff like that, right? So I can say the low limit is 20, higher limit is above 80 will become red, low limit it will show green or something, something like that, right? So I'm going to click on OK. And let us try to run this. Okay, let us try to run this. So I'm going to go ahead and click on offline simulation. And we can see that we have this, completely blank program now, right? So I'm going to first update the program right here, right? And I'm going to go to my HMI And the first thing I'm going to do is actually set a timer value, right? So if you notice, nothing is going to happen now because the timer has 0 value, right? So I'm going to set a timer value of, let's say, 100. And value of 100 has been set in the timer now from the HMI. And if I actually set this to turn on, the timer will start running now, okay? And you can see that the timer display is being displayed here, as well as the tank is now going up, right? So I have told the tank that the full is 100 and above 80 turn red, below 20 turn green, and in between turn blue, right? So you can actually reset this and run this again as well, right? Right. So I hope everyone has understood this, the overview of this, how to, basically interface an HMI. It's very simple and very powerful because you can actually use a simulator to basically simulate anything, right? And obviously, this HMI is going to be a real device, right? It's going to be a real device, and it is going to be something that something that is a touchscreen device which will be mounted on the machine panel generally, right? So a real program would look something pretty complicated, right? So maybe tomorrow I could give you a sneak peek into a program which has been developed for the industry, right? Great. So this is all about HMI. I'm going to take a very brief introduction to SCADA. Okay, and I'm not going to take the whole of SCADA because we will not have enough time. But we are just going to take a very brief introduction to SCADA. And then tomorrow we will complete the rest of the SCADA and stuff like that, right? So for everyone's reference, your SCADA software is called as DiaView. Okay. And when you install DiaView, you actually have two environments which basically pop up. One is your development environment, and one is your runtime. Okay. So SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. And this is the software which is used. And if you actually have to compare HMI and SCADA, okay, SCADA is generally used when you want to control a whole plant or something similar to that, right? So let's say that you want to control the whole factory. You want to have the all the data in one particular dashboard, okay? Or you are communicating with many machines or something like that, right? So in that case, generally you will use SCADA. Okay. SCADA is also extensively used in the pharmaceutical industry. Okay. So in the pharmaceutical industry, you will have even individual machines having, SCADA in individual machines, right? So SCADA is, I would say, way more advanced than an HMI. You will not require to use SCADA for every application. But it is very useful to know how to program a SCADA. Very, very similar to the HMI, right? And I'm just going to be running the demo program today and we'll stop. Okay. So I'm going to click on this run button right here and click on ignore. And this is basically just going to run my SCADA environment, right? So this is the sample program again given by Delta Electronics, right? Which will be running this whole sample program. And it is just starting it. Okay, so this is a demo project of a heating system. Okay, so as you can see in SCADA, things like animations and stuff is given a lot of priority here. So you will have a lot of tools to do things like animations and stuff, right? So definitely, way more advanced than HMI in terms of animations. Also in SCADA, the priority and focus is given to things like report generation, printing reports, making sure that your alarms are organized and stored in a database or something. So you have various functions like that, right? So just to sum it up, I would say that if you have many machines in a particular factory, most of those machines will have HMIs, right? And that HMI can be part of that SCADA. Okay. When we talk about SCADA, again, SCADA is a software. Okay. SCADA is not a device. Okay. Generally, when we say SCADA, it means it's a software. Okay. What you run the SCADA on, that is up to you. You can run it. I'm running it right now on my laptop, right? You can also run it in something which we call as an IPC, which is an industrial PC, right? You do get screens, HMIs with a built-in SCADA installed in it, right? So it is completely up to you how you use it, right? But SCADA is a software. When we talk about HMI, HMI is actually hardware, right? We are talking about the actual screen, right? So your HMI can be a part of SCADA, but SCADA cannot be a part of HMI. Okay, so that is just a brief about it, right? So we see this is just a sample program showing like a heating system. You can see the furnace, you can see the animation happening here. You can see certain alarms happening over here at the bottom, right? And you can see different temperature readings happening and various things, right? So generally SCADA is used as a sort of central dashboard to check your whole system, right? You want to check your whole factory, what is happening, then you will use your SCADA. Now okay, I'll need to log in from here. So I'll log in using 000, yes. And they also have an example for HVAC, okay, which is your cooling system, heating or cooling. So here we have cooling, and you can see that there are various pumps. We can see a flow happening here. We can see various parameters, right? And they have also given an example of a water treatment plant as well. Okay. So this, again, you can download this software. It's free of cost. You can go ahead and download it. You can run this simulation and just see how everything is running. Okay. Just to give you an idea of the hierarchy of how SCADA is generally placed, right? So you will have SCADA at the top, right? Generally connected to something which we call as an OPC server, okay? And we generally use a communication standard called as OPC UADA, right? And to this particular SCADA, we will be connecting things like PLCs, switches, maybe more PLCs connected to these switches. You know, so you can see that there are various PLCs which are attached over here, right? So in this particular example, you have the AH series PLC, you have another PLC connected to that PLC, you have servos connected to that PLC, power meters. You can have other brands as well, cross-brand communication happening also in the SCADA, right? So this is just to give you an idea of the hierarchy, basically, right? Okay, so y'all can go through this, y'all can go through this whole example. They've given a fantastic, representation of, a recipe and stuff like that. Again, we are running out of time today, so I will be continuing this tomorrow, right? So just to give you an idea, this is how recipes. So salty bread, coffee bread, cream bread, things like that, and you can actually just load that recipe, right, to the actual machine, right? So you can see there are various ingredients, right, which can be, loaded, right? Great. So before I conclude, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to take them. We'll be continuing with SCADA tomorrow. Unfortunately, we couldn't, finish the whole thing today. So I'll just take the first 10-15 minutes about SCADA, and then tomorrow we'll continue with drives. Okay. So any questions related to what we have covered today, I'll be happy to take them. Any questions, please let me know. I'll just wait for a few minutes for any questions. Yeah, recipes are like presets. Yes, recipes are like presets. So you can basically preset ingredients, which is your parameters. Like, so let's say one particular type of bread, it required 5 ingredients, right? So you can preset that and say that for this bread, when I click this bread, I want all those parameters to be fed into the machine. So it's like a preset, correct? What is history in HMI? History basically will show you your things like alarm history. It can also show you things like when the HMI has been accessed, right? So supposing someone has gone and given user access, like higher level access. So when has he logged in? When has the operator run the machine? How much time it has been running? Yeah, one question is SCADA an interface or a software model? SCADA is basically a software. Okay, SCADA is a software which can be installed on a PC. Okay, it can be installed on a PC. It can be installed on an industrial PC, right? So it is a software which runs on a PC. Can we use PLC simulation to communicate with external physical HMI, or it is internal HMI communication only? No, it is only internal HMI communication. Okay, so honestly speaking, if you are very serious about PLC and HMI programming, you should try to purchase a real PLC. At least a real PLC. That would help a lot, right? So you can use a real PLC with the simulated HMI, right, in your PC, but you can't do it the opposite way, where you have a simulated PLC with a real HMI. Data logging, yes, data logging is part of your HMI. So data logging is a separate thing. History is basically to show whatever data you have logged. Okay, so it can show alarm history, it can show data history or whatever, right? Data logging is a separate part of HMI where you can actually export your data into something like an SQL database or something, right? So that is also possible. Is HMI like an analog GUI? It is a GUI, right? I don't know about analog GUI, but yes, it is a GUI. Is history like log generation? Yes, it is. You can think of it as log generation. Exactly that. Is HMI linked to an actual machine? How? Okay. Yes, it is definitely linked to an actual machine. So in your general automation panel, okay, you will see that all your devices are going to be communicating to your HMI, and your HMI is generally put in front of the machine on some panel. Okay. So that is where the operator is actually going to operate the machine, generally from an HMI, right? So it is linked definitely to an actual machine. How it is linked is it's basically communicating to all the PLC and other devices which are there in your machine, right? When it comes to Delta HMIs and timers and stuff, are they all closely integrated with Delta PLCs, or are they integrable with external controllers like Jetson Nano as well? Okay. Um, you can basically communicate between these devices. Okay. So if you want to communicate between a Raspberry Pi to a Delta PLC or Jetson Nano to a Delta PLC, you will have to establish which communication standard you're using. Okay. So to give you an example, if I have a Raspberry Pi and I want to talk to a Delta PLC, I'll do it through Modbus TCP IP, right? I'll use my Ethernet port and I'll use Modbus TCP IP. So you have to make sure that you are using a correct industrial communication protocol. Okay, then you can talk to the devices. Oh yes, and you can't use these. Yeah, so if you're asking if you can use the timers and other such functions in other things like Jetson Nano and all, you can't, right? That will have its own timer counters, whatever it is. Can we connect logs of events from SCADA also from HMI? Yes, you can. The SCADA will have to be connected to the HMI. Okay. So yes, the SCADA is extensively used in the pharmaceutical industry. So I'm sure you know that pharmaceutical industry is very strict about their data collection, data logging, and stuff like that, right? So report generation is very, very important in the pharmaceutical industry. So that is why SCADA is such an important part of the pharmaceutical industry, because a report is generated after each shift and it has to be in correct format and stuff like that, right? So you definitely can collect logs of data. Is there any proprietary communication protocol by Delta? Uh, I don't think that Delta has any proprietary communication protocol. When I have worked with Delta, I have always seen they support your general communication protocols, which is your Modbus TCP IP, Modbus serial, CANopen, OPC, maybe EtherCAT. These are all, like standardized communication protocols, right? So I don't think that Delta has any proprietary. Okay. Even for their servos, they have CANopen and EtherCAT communication protocol. Okay, so it is not proprietary. Can we use Delta on Delta HMI on other PLC like Allen Bradley? Yes, you can, right? You can, if you actually go to the HMI and you click on add device or something, you will actually see that you have different options for that, right? So If you go to the HMI, you can actually go and see in the manufacturers tab, right? When we were going to the communication settings, you can actually see that it supports all these different types of devices. So you can see some of the common ones like Siemens, Toshiba, Omron, Mitsubishi, Keyence, Hitachi, Fuji, Emerson, Beckhoff, Allen Bradley, so many different types of PLCs, right? So you can just select it, and then you can select the particular PLC which you want to communicate with. So yes, it does support, right? It does support. Can we use single HMI for multiple PLCs? Absolutely. Yes, you can, right? So you can have multiple PLCs on the same Ethernet network or the same serial network, and you can communicate with all these PLCs at once. No problem at all. Yeah. HMI is meant to be a multi-device communication device. How can we collect logs from the PLC? Okay, this is a separate topic. If you are implementing this, you can reach out to me. I will tell you. It's probably a half an hour explanation, right? So you can reach out to me if you are wanting to do that. The simple, in a nutshell, how you collect logs is that you will be pushing data to registers and storing it there. That's what you would be doing basically. And then those registers you will be exporting and maybe accessing from an HMI or a SCADA or something, and then pushing it to a database or an Excel file or something. So that's just in a nutshell how you would do it. Okay. Yes, I think we can close the lecture for today. Tomorrow's lecture is going to be very exciting. Okay. We are going to be learning about servo drives and servo motors and drives in general. Okay. So if you are interested in robotics and you would like to see how servos are run, an industrial servo, definitely you would love tomorrow's lecture. Okay. If and how to connect to me, I am on WhatsApp. If you're in the WhatsApp group, you can directly message me. Okay. I'm the admin on the WhatsApp group, so you can directly connect with me. If anyone has seen a robotic arm, you all will notice that on your arm, your robots all have servo motors on the joints. Okay. So most people directly jump to robots, not knowing about servo, which is not possible, right? You need to learn about servo first, right? So tomorrow we'll complete the SCADA part, right? And we will finish off our 3 days session by taking drives, which is your servo drives, servo motors, right? Okay. Whoever guessed, whoever you are, thank you very much for that compliment, right? Great. So guys, if you all have any doubts, please reach out to me. Again, thank you Delta Electronics for organizing this, guys. I hope that all of you start to, explore Delta's products. A really amazing line of products. There are also a lot of free software which they provide for simulation, like I showed you. All the softwares which I've showed you today, all free of cost. Okay. So excellent for learning about PLCs, and hope you guys enjoyed today. We'll be connecting tomorrow at 10 a.m. Okay, so 10 to 12 will be tomorrow's lecture. Thanks everyone. I think we crossed 200 participants today. So thank you very much for the overwhelming response, right? And I'll see everyone tomorrow. Take care.